"Maybe I'm getting old and out of touch," said Iris Reeves, her rhinestone earrings glittering in the glare from the stage lights. "But I seem to remember country western music being better than whatever this is." "That's a common nostalgic fallacy," said her housemate, Geneva Pomelo, looking rather stiff and awkward in a blue denim dress and a pair of brown leather boots. "You like the country music of the 80s because you listened to it during your most formative years. The quality stays consistent through the decades," which was a polite way of saying she considered it all dreadful. "I don't know about that," said Abby Nettles. "I grew up listening to Broadway and classical, and this is objectively dreadful." Abby had invited them out to a local dance hall. On Tuesdays, between 7 and 10 at night, admission was free for people over the age of 55. Abby, a former English major and aspiring novelist, who had only recently learned that she was George Wilson's daughter, which seemed to have been an unlikely fan of country western line dancing, but her fiancé, Bud Henderson, had insisted on going. "I grew up on this stuff," he had told her. "We're country music royalty in my family. My Uncle Dick—" "Country music royalty? There's no such thing," Abby had replied. She and Bud had been quarreling since the moment of their engagement. "If you would let me finish—" "I'll go to the bar with you," said Abby, "because we're engaged, and I think it's important to keep the peace in a relationship. But I don't have to love it. I just hope you'll extend me the same courtesy the next time I want to spend a night at the opera." Bud had groaned in despair. "If I had known that dating you would mean having to sit through the Marriage of Figaro or whatever." "I think it's only fair," said Abby with a triumphant smile. "I go line dancing with you, and you go to the opera with me." Geneva, who had overheard much of this conversation from her perch in the kitchen where she was filing quarterly taxes, had a shrewd suspicion that Abby was trying to torture Bud into ending the relationship. She seemed to think if she annoyed him enough, he would eventually break things off, and she would be free to go out with Benjamin Rosenthal, the gawky professor in the tweed jacket who taught English literature in the local community college. Abby was due to inherit millions from her late mama, who had recently died at the age of 82. But under the terms of the will, she would forfeit her rights to the inheritance if she broke off the engagement with Bud. It wasn't clear what would happen if Bud ended things himself. Perhaps not coincidentally then, for the past couple of months, Abby had been more than usually annoying. "Bud," she had said in a chirpy tone on a warm Tuesday evening in August when Iris was grilling salmon, "how would you like to go with me to the Robert Louis Stevenson exhibit at the Wranglers Hill History Museum on Saturday? They're showing a first edition of his masterpiece, A Child's Garden of Verses, in a glass case." Bud looked as though he would rather have eaten toenails, but perhaps remembering that he would soon be marrying into millions, he nodded politely and said he would love to go. "Bud," Abby had said on the day after the museum visit, "there's a Wilkie Collins impersonator speaking at the public library on Wednesday at 7. I've looked him up, and he's supposed to be the best Wilkie Collins impersonator in the business. I hope you didn't have plans that night. I've already bought us tickets." Abby knew perfectly well that Bud had already had plans to see the latest Marvel film that night. It was all he had talked about for the last 3 weeks. There was a moment of silence in which Bud seemed to be debating whether this was worth bringing up or not. "That sounds great, dear," he said at last, and with great effort. "I would love to go see the Wilkie Collins impersonator." Geneva, who had been watering the plants on the kitchen windowsill during this exchange, wondered whether Bud even knew who Wilkie Collins was. Either way, she had to admit to being grudgingly impressed. Bud had been on his best behavior lately. The prospect of marrying into wealth will cure a man of many vices.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.